Everybody, thanks for joining us for another episode of Advisor Access. We are excited to have the wonderful Debbie Bush, our president of Avenue 2 Travel, join us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Debbie. We are going to be talking about Debbie's recent adventure to London, one of my favorite cities in the entire world as well. So I'm very excited to chat with you today about it. Debbie, welcome to, I think this is your first Advisor Access with me, yeah?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. First of many, I hope. So before we kick off with London, Debbie, can you just tell us a little bit about your history with Avenue 2? Because most come to Avenue 2, but Avenue 2 is your babies.
Yes, it is my baby. I got into this the way many people a number of years ago got into the industry, which was by helping other people. Being an intrepid traveler myself, everybody always asked me, well, what would you do if you were going here? And I'd say, come on over and we'll just work on it. And so we'd spread the maps on the floor in the living room and we'd decide what the person wanted to do. And then I just help them. And that turned into, it dawned on me at some point that why don't I do this professionally? And so I began working for a local agency, which I subsequently bought. And the rest is history.
The rest is history. And here we are many years later, bigger agency, new offices across the board, and moving on full steam ahead.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So let's dive into London. So obviously you've been to London before, but this was a particularly unique trip to London. Tell us a little bit about getting there. And I know we're just going to cover the elephant in the room off the bat, which is you went to London kind of in a post-COVID world. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience flying to London and getting through the airport?
Well, I thought it was very comfortable. We were flying out of JFK. And we happened to be using the British Air terminal there, which is rather small. And so it was a very easy access to the counter, and we were in and out in a very few minutes. In terms of doing the paperwork beforehand, there is a little bit of paperwork, but I think that is changing, over time, and even when we're speaking now relative to when we actually went, things are much easier. So I think the thing to always remember is that everything is changing, and it's just important to kind of keep up to date. Things are going to get better, maybe just a little bit worse, and then they're going to get better. And so we just have to be able to adjust because we all want to travel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad it was smooth and straightforward. I know when I recently went as well, I flew through LAX, and you would never know anything was different. It was wonderful, and very refreshing as well. So when you got to London, you were traveling with one of our most exceptional partners globally, NoteWorthy. And I know you have a long history with the company. Can you tell us just a little bit about what inspired this trip for everybody and who you were traveling with?
Okay, we were very, very honored to be invited on this trip. It was a special trip designed by 12 of our hotel partners in London, along with the wonderful, talented people at NoteWorthy who help us with our tours for our clients on the ground. In celebration of the fact that London was reopened to the public and to the world. And they wanted everybody to understand that you're welcome back, that they are open and ready to have guests back in London. That was the feeling we had from the moment we were on the ground, from the moment that we were met by our driver, from the moment we had our tests as we came through the airport. Everybody said, "We are so glad you're here." And that was down to, just taxi drivers and people in shops. Everybody said, "We're so glad to hear American accents. So glad you're back." So that was exciting.
And I'm sure the feeling was reciprocal as well. It was nice to be there again and hear them and everything that they have to offer. Wonderful. So tell us, you stayed at the Dorchester, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, we stayed at the Dorchester, which is a stunningly beautiful hotel, and so very well known throughout the world, and in London is a very special place to stay. It sits near Hyde Park and actually sort of across the street, and has incredible service and just a wonderful, warm, welcoming feeling to it. They were very well aware why we were there. They were gracious when we arrived, and we had a wonderful stay with everything handled for us from beginning to end. Yeah.
Beautiful. And you mentioned that there were 12 hotel partners that were participating in this particular event. Knowing your love of the Dorchester, were there one or two others that if you were talking to your clients about visiting London in the future, that you would also want to make sure that they considered as well when selecting their hotel?
Well, that's
A hard question,
really,
I know.
that's asking me to decide among all my children which are the best. They're all wonderful and all different in their own right. And it kind of brings me to one of my pet things about going to London is that we have so many wonderful hotels that have one, they're in different neighborhoods, and two, they have different attributes. They're worth seeing, each and every one of them. So, I have been suggesting to some of my clients that you think about London as, maybe a 10-day trip and stay in 3 different hotels in different parts of the city. So stay in Mayfair, stay in Kensington, stay down near the Borough Market, overlooking Tower Bridge at the Shard. At the top, Shangri-La has a fabulous hotel that looks right down on Tower Bridge. Then in terms of being in the Hyde Park area, you have not only the Dorchester, but the Four Seasons and 45 Park Lane. And then nearby also is the Mandarin. So you have a number of choices in that area. And then, of course, in Mayfair, the Browns and the Connaught and Claridge's. Then I can't forget to say something about the Corinthia, because it has very cool views of the Thames, as does the Savoy. So I hope I've hit most of them.
The list goes on and on. I love the idea of spending 10 days in London. I know you and I have both spent a lot of time in London over the years, and I certainly can say that every time I go, I do something that I haven't done before, no matter what. It's just, there's always something new, whether it's a museum you've been to before and they have a new exhibition, or something that's been under renovation for many years and is reopening. So 10 days in London probably still just scratches the surface if you were marching every single day to see and sightsee. But I love that idea of spreading it across a couple of different hotels, because while London's very well connected, it's very easy to get around, that the neighborhoods have such a different feeling and vibe. I think that's such a great idea for those perhaps watching that do have the time to dedicate to spending that time in the city.
Ironically, my last trip before everything closed for COVID was to London, and I stayed at that time in 4 different hotels, and that was the genesis of the idea. And it was only made more clear to me with this trip that it would be a really fun thing to do. And I think it's because you can easily, if you're going for your first time to London and you want to see all the big stuff, then absolutely stay in one spot. Make sure you go out to the places that you're going to go out to. But if you've been there many times, you may be really surprised if you just say, I'm going to focus on this particular area really carefully, and you'll find the little hidden parks and the little treasures that you never had a chance to see before, that you perhaps whiz by in a taxi, and now you have a chance to truly appreciate them. And so that's, I think it's a fun thing to think about if you've got a longer period of time to spend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked about NoteWorthy, and NoteWorthy is an exceptional partner in the UK for touring and transportation services all over the UK. They really have phenomenal access to very, very unique experiences, some of which you got to enjoy while you were here. Tell us a little bit about what your days looked like while you were in London.
Yeah, we were very fortunate to try some of the tours that we have done before, but it was nice to have a refresher and to see a new focus. One of my very favorites is the Churchill Cabinet War Rooms, which were these underground rooms that where Churchill ran the World War II. It's incredible when you actually see these little tiny rooms that a huge undertaking like D-Day and in fact, the entire running of the war was run from these little tiny rooms with very archaic communications, telephones in different colors, maps with pins on them. And so it's quite amazing to see what was done. And the museum also has quite a bit of information about Churchill's life as well. But the thing that Noteworthy brings to this, and it's so much fun, is the fact that they allow you the opportunity to go behind the glass. So the two most famous rooms, the cabinet room where Churchill's cabinet met with him and where all of the army officers came to meet, it's possible to go behind that glass and actually sit in Churchill's chair. You can feel where he knocked his ring against the side of the chair and just gouged out a little hole in it. I mean, you can see where he left his cigar every day. And the other one is the map room, which is, as I mentioned, have the maps of the ocean where the ships would be and all where the land troops were on the continent in Europe. And there you can go behind the glass as well and see actually where the people who are working sat, and they actually found sugar cubes that had been left by someone in the, at the end of the war for their tea, and they were just still sitting on their desk, and they leave them there for you to get a sense of what it was like to actually work there. But it's a fascinating museum, and the opportunity to go behind the scenes is just wonderful, particularly for anybody who is interested in World War II history, which is, another whole big component of why one would go to London. If you have that interest, there's certainly a lot to do, and you can devise an entire, trip around that if it's of that much interest. The other thing was we were fortunate enough to see Diana's wedding gown, which has been brought into London on temporary loan. I think it's going to be there though for a couple of years at Kensington Palace. So you get an opportunity to see how tiny she was and how very, very long the train was. And that was fun. And it's actually housed in the orangery of the Kensington Palace. And you can walk down in the gardens of the palace and see the new statue that was erected of Diana. So it's kind of a nice Diana day for those who are interested in her history. And of course, lots on TV about that recently. And then the other one that I truly loved was we had an opportunity to go into the underground again. I guess lots of stuff underground on this trip, but the London Underground, as you know, is a wonderful subway system. And one of the main stations is Charing Cross, but below the actual station that everybody uses today is a second layer of underground track and station. And we were able to go down into that area, and they use that now to train people for the London Underground. They train the government officials for counterterrorism work, and they also do a lot of movie shots down there. So the escalator that 007 slid down in Skyfall is there, and you can actually see if you can
do it yourself.
What he did without falling off. So that was great fun.
How neat. I know the London Underground is just such an expansive system, and I know there's a lot of closed stations as well, but that's amazing that there's one that is purpose built for training and
Yes, it was, but you just can't go there. You have to go with Noteworthy because they have the special access.
Of course. Yeah. How neat.
Very fun.
Super fun. What have we missed? I know this was a quick jaunt in and out of London for you, but are there any other cool things you got to do with Noteworthy while you were there?
Well, we did have a royal audience, which was very exciting. We were able to meet Prince Edward, the Earl of Wessex, and that was a lovely opportunity. He joined us for a roundtable discussion of the state of the industry and what was happening in London and how England was opening up to tourism. So that's a very special memory that we have. I think overall it was to just be back and be doing wonderful, seeing our friends, first of all, from all of our hotelier friends from London, but also being out in the world and having wonderful dinners and seeing people enjoy life again and be walking on the streets open, and it was just wonderful. So I think that we can all look to that as an example of there is an opportunity there to get out and see what's open.
Very, very true. And I know I was in London a few weeks after you were, and I know we spoke about it before I went, after you came back, and it was just even more open, even more delightful, even more just felt like it used to feel, which, you know, it's a hard phrase to throw around these days, but it was certainly so wonderful to be traveling again. And for many people watching, there's kind of that initial hurdle of getting back into it. And once you do that first hurdle, then the travel bug's biting again, and you're ready to take off as soon as you get home. So London is certainly a great gateway, not just to spend 10 days, but of course, it's very well connected from the US. British Airways does a tremendous job all over Europe and Africa. So even if you just got a couple of days, it's certainly well worth spending, doing a stopover there. And between the fabulous hotel partners, Debbie's exceptional knowledge, and Noteworthy, it's certainly a trip in and of itself, even if it was extended. Wonderful. Well, Debbie, it's been delightful. It's been so fun today. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about London. And if you liked today's video, please don't forget to hit subscribe below and be alerted to our next episode of Advisor Access.
That's great. Thank you so much, Chris. I had a great time doing it, and I look forward to seeing everybody soon.